So let's welcome Sam.
That's the first time I've heard of that title. um, but thank you, Pastor David. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Kim, and I'd like to share a little bit about my story. Um, I grew up as a pastor's kid, and to be honest, I never ever wanted to be a pastor. You know, and why? Because it meant you're going to be poor, right? And so my dad was a pastor, right? And I used to tell God, Lord, I'll serve you, but just a different way, you know, another way, just not that way. But after many years of tugging, back in 2001, I decided to trust God and to kind of take that leap and believe that God would take care of me. And I went into ministry. Um, I went to Fuller, right? And I went into ministry. And I did that for a season. I did that for 11 years as a pastor, immersed in youth group, Christian education, uh, preaching as an English ministry pastor, and doing all of that. I did that. Um, but I stepped away from that in 2012. A lot of different things were happening during that time. And I went to be an engineer again, because that's what I graduated as, mechanical engineer from UC Santa Barbara. Go Gauchos. All right. But when I made that decision to walk away, I really wrestled with that decision, right? To take care of my family. Was I abandoning my calling from God? Um, was I letting God down when I kind of walked away? Um, then during my first week at my job as an engineer, I met this gentleman who was the facilities manager of that place. Um, and what he told me, it really kind of changed my perspective, right, of kind of my calling. And what he said to me was, and he actually was a former pastor, right, which is like, what are the chances of that? And he said to me, even though I left the church as a pastor, I still have my little church, my family. And that really, that simple statement really brought peace uh, to me. My kids were 3 and 5 at that time. And so it was really important to me to try to do my best to minister to them and take care of them. But it reminded me that ministry isn't just limited to preaching behind the pulpit here, but it's how we live, it's how we love, it's how we serve in the places wherever God places us. And that first place for me was my family, right? So fast forward now, right? Uh, 2022, coming out of COVID, um, and my daughter actually joined gym production. Yeah, she joined gym production, and then I thought, oh, this is great. I'll join, this production, and we'll have something to talk about. That didn't work out, right? But I still learned. Okay, I started, working on the cameras, and it's just really trying to bring, this worship to the people that are watching online, right? I mean, that's why we have these cameras and also for the recordings you guys could see later. But looking back, I can see how God has been weaving my story all along. My ministry time taught me how to shepherd people's hearts, but my engineering background has taught me how to do some of this technical stuff, right? Honestly, today, God's funny. Nothing was working right when we got here. It's still not working perfectly. um, and but put those two things together. You know, God's using me to help people to worship Jesus, right? Through the camera, through the online stream. And one of the most important lessons I've learned through this time comes from Matthew chapter 22, verse 37 through 39, where Jesus says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." So every Sunday for us on the worship and production team, our team gathers together, and off to the side, it used to be over here with Priska, but now it's over here. But we gather for a huddle. And to be honest, it was a pretty difficult for me, right? Because there's things to do. And as an engineer, it's like I want to fix things. Let's get to it. But those times I realized as we kept on doing them were very vital, very important. Because we got a moment to pause, to invite God to lead us, right? For the people that are in the back and the people that are here on platform, gave us a moment to remind ourselves what we're doing is just not technical, right? What we're doing is very spiritual. And that's something I was not seeing as clearly. We're not just operating cameras or making sure that these slides are going properly, right? Or making sure like Justin's right now in the back doing the audio, making sure like it can be heard. And that's in here and then online. But it's just more than that. We're all helping to create a space where people can encounter God, right? Where people can meet God. But it first starts with us as a team, with me, as we huddle in the front. I started off as a camera operator, and I think Pastor Dave, you talked about that the other day, right? And I actually like that job, right? I just stay on my camera. I can like pan, zoom, do whatever creative shots, and like I was happy to be there. And then then one day, Sunny asked me, "Sam, do you want to do ATEM?" Which basically means you're switching between all cameras and you're basically the director of the online stream. And I'm like, oh no, that's too stressful, right? It's hard enough when you're on the camera and Pastor David is walking back and forth like this and like this, and you're like trying to keep the camera on him. Like you're thinking, is there going to be one day that he's just going to stand still? And so I'm like, and so I think for me, kind of, this is my notes here, sorry. But then I said yes, right? And it's been a journey for me of learning and trusting God in the process. Like I mentioned, today things are not going well, I worry about, am I going to miss a cue? Am I going to cut to the wrong camera? And that has happened, if you guys watch the videos, you'll probably see it, right? You see somebody's back or you see nothing, right? It happens many times, right? But God has reminded me of the course of all this. There's been many times I listened to something online or a podcast or even the radio, and God has touched my heart and helped my faith to grow. And so with that, I jumped in, right? And so Before every service, like a minute before, I pray with the team, right? That's listening to my direction, right? Go zoom here, do this, do that. And praying that the people that are listening and watching would really be touched by God's hand, right? And that God would use us as we do this. And so one time that I was praying this prayer, and I ended, and then someone on the camera goes, "Sam, they already started." And I'm like, "Oh, no, go live, camera one." Right? And no, this is all true. Right? So there's been many days, right, where, it doesn't go perfect. And one of those days I was kind of like thinking, maybe they should choose somebody else, right? Maybe I shouldn't have said yes, right? And that same week, early that week, I got a text, right? And that text said, "Someone online accepted Christ." And so in that moment, it really came full circle for me, right? And God was showing me that he was using me as a person to share his gospel, but just in a different way, right? My calling, didn't end, right? Just because I left the pulpit, but it simply shifted. It changed, right? And God just needed me to say yes. So serving on production has taught me that loving God, right, and loving people really means giving him my best, the best that I can give, right? And trusting him to multiply it, trusting him to really be the one that will allow those confessions of faith and just those spiritual fruit to grow in the people that hear and see this. God has taken my engineering skills, my pastoral heart, and he's turned them into tools for his kingdom. And for that, for someone that, is not perfect, I'm super grateful to God. I'm truly blessed to serve at the garden, and I'm excited to see how God is going to continue to grow his family here and online, right? And one last thing, if you've ever thought about joining the worship team, right, or the production team, or honestly, any serving team at the church, right? I highly encourage you to do that, right? Just say yes. If you have this calling, don't wait for Sunny or somebody. Sometimes that's what happens. But you just need to jump in. Jump in and trust what God's going to do. And I promise you, you will be blessed and you will be a blessing. Thank you.